Hi, I'm Lindsay Jones, voice of Ruby on the animated show RWBY. Autodesk Maya is an important tool in the creation of our show. It's the primary software used in many of our pipelines, including modeling, rigging, animating, lighting, rendering, and visual effects. Today, Rooster Teeth rigging artist Gio Coutinho will be showing us how she uses Maya for character rigging.
In this video, I'll be going over one of the ways that I've used rivets to enhance my rigs. Rivets are nifty tools that you can use to attach an object or a control or whatever it is to a surface. That object will move according to the surface that it's attached to, regardless of how it deforms. So it can follow skin and it can follow blend shapes and nonlinear deformers. As you can see here on my scene, I have a couple of cubes. The large one is bound to two bones, and it also has a blend shape on it. The small one is bound to a single bone, which is completely separate from the hierarchy of the large cube. Once you have something like this set up, what you have to do is use a script in order to make rivets. So if I go into edge selections, which is what this script relies on, I can select a couple of edges and run my script. I'll be linking to the script on the video description, and you can find it quite easily on Creative Crash or with a simple Google search. And basically what it does is it creates a locator which is attached to the mesh. It will follow this face that you attached this to, regardless of how it deforms. So you can see if I turn the blend shape on, it's following that. And if I move the controls, it's also following the face. Once you have your actual rivet set up, all you really have to do is just constrain whatever object you want to that rivet. If you want to constrain a controller, it is essential that you have an offset node to that controller so that it acts as a buffer so that you don't need to constrain the controller itself. So if you look at my small cube control, you'll see that there is an offset node, which is what has the actual translation values, which match the actual joints values. And if you look at the control itself, you'll see that all of the transformations are zeroed out. This is obviously very important because you don't want your controller to be constrained to anything. Otherwise, that kind of defeats the purpose of a controller. Once you have that offset node, all you really need to do is select your rivet, select the offset, and go into constrain and parent that. I will be parenting it without maintaining offset, and that will snap the object to that rivet. This might not necessarily be the behavior that you want from this, but just for the sake of this demo, I'm going to go ahead and move this around. And you can see that your cube is now following the larger cube. And I can do whatever I want with this. It will keep on following it quite accurately. And then even if I go into the mesh and turn the cube blend shape on, it's still following that. And now the great thing about this, as I was saying with the offset node, you can now use your control to actually move this object however you want. It's completely independent from the other mesh while also still following it. Now, if I was to actually set this up carefully, let's say I go back to my bind pose. I'll be deleting the parent constraint that I created to the cube offset. And then I'm going to place it how I want it to be placed on this surface. And this actually looks pretty good. Losing those rotations was enough to have it be stuck on the actual surface of the larger cube. So I'm going to go ahead and select the rivet again, select the small cube offset, and this time I will maintain offset. Now you'll see if I go into the controls again for the large cube, it's following that surface very accurately and very smoothly. And I can also turn that blend shape on with no problem, while also still having control over this object. So this can be very useful with things that you need to attach to clothing or to skin even, or even objects that need to move rigidly. It's also just a good way to track the position of something in a scene. Now, a very important thing to be aware of with rivets is that they can sometimes create loops if you're not careful. So let's say I go into my small cube joint after going back into my bind pose. If I select that joint and I select the large cube and I add the influence from the small cube joint onto the large cube, you'll see that you get a cycle check, and also that the rivet broke. You'll see it starts freaking out because what's going on here is you have the large cube, which is controlling the position of the rivet, which is controlling the position of the small cube offset, which is controlling the position of the small cube bind. So if the small cube bind is also influencing the large cube, it is also influencing the position of the rivet. Even though the weights for it are completely zeroed out, Maya thinks that it is having some sort of influence over the large cube. So it creates a cycle and it breaks everything. So when you create a rivet, make sure that whatever joint, if you have a joint riveted to another surface, make sure that that joint does not influence the surface that the rivet is actually pinned to.